Welcome to your instant reaction. Not so instant, because I've gone down, done interviews. Michigan pounded Penn State on the ground, ground out a win, 32 consecutive runs to end the game. Yes, Michigan called some passes, but there were some scrambles. There was a pass interference call. They got one called back. So it's 32 consecutive runs, essentially. J.J. McCarthy threw the ball 8 times, and Michigan won against a very good team. And Penn State, that offense was dreadful down the stretch, just dreadful. And a couple just interesting phenomena at the end of this game, because I'm going down to the field with about 6 minutes to go. There were Penn State fans leaving. It was still an 8-point game at that point. Penn State still had a chance, but they were leaving. Meanwhile, Michigan fans were heading down closer, and obviously very loud, very boisterous. Michigan's team, very boisterous, waving goodbye to the Penn State fans, talking trash with the Penn State fans who were not very nice to them. And what a strange 24 hours. Very strange. So I got into State College on Friday afternoon, and one of the first stops I made was the airport where Michigan's plane had just landed. While the plane had been in the air, there had been the news from the Big Ten that they were going to suspend Jim Harbaugh for the remainder of the regular season. He could coach during the week, but couldn't coach during the games. Michigan lands. They go to their hotel. The thought is that they're going to get an injunction. You know, they file their suit. All that happens Friday night. The thinking is there'll be an injunction issued Saturday morning that Harbaugh will be allowed to coach. He was not. Sharon Moore winds up coaching. And on a day when the offensive line coach was the acting head coach, that's the performance you want. They were breaking runs. They did a really good job of using Penn State's pressure against them. When they get a 3rd and median, 3rd and long, Penn State would be coming, expecting pass, trying to go heat up J.J. McCarthy. And what Michigan would do is they would seal the edges and try to get outside with Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards, and it worked. And they broke a couple big runs, and it just worked. And so, like Chris is saying, J.J. McCarthy is overrated, same as Michigan. We won't be able to compete against Georgia or Bama. Carson Beck better than McCarthy. Listen, just because he didn't have to throw on Saturday doesn't mean he can't. In fact, one of the most important plays was a called pass on a 3rd down play. I believe it was a 3rd and 2 in the 3rd quarter. And he was going to throw, but nobody was open. And he strung it out long enough so that he could gain the first down on the ground. That ended up with a field goal that took it from a 5-point lead to an 8-point lead. Mitch says James Franklin needs an assistant coach just to tell him when to go for 2 and when not to. Yeah, so Penn State's first touchdown was an interesting one, because the preceding possession, they had gained, I believe, 9 yards on first down. They wasted 2nd and 3rd, ended up having a punt. So it looked like they were going to do it again on that possession. They went for it on 4th down. They got it. And then they went for it again on 4th down with a throwback pass to Drew Aller. They follow that with a quarterback draw for a touchdown. And it's like, well, okay. Well, Penn State's just figured out how to march it down the field on Michigan. Is that happening? Well, yeah, it was happening. But then what happens after that is James Franklin goes for 2, which felt like it was a little early to chase the points. It felt like after they didn't get that 2-point conversion, that you kind of call things differently. And it because then you're down 5, then you're down 8. I think down 7 feels a little bit different. Now, look, as bad as the offense was in the 4th quarter, I don't know that it would have mattered. I don't know that it would have changed anything. So it's hard to say, but I will say this. I don't remember a crowd at a team that was going to be a 9 or 10 win team. Like Penn State's probably going to finish the season as a 10-win team. I don't remember a home crowd being that just grumbly. I don't even know if that's a word, but even in the first quarter, some of those offensive decisions, just the amount of grumbling in this, it was like, rah, 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 and you could hear like kind of muted boos. And you got that as the game went on, and they became kind of more boos just as the game went on. It was very strange. I've got the Michigan fans in the chat all saying, bet. If you don't know why Here's why. So Trevor Keegan, their offensive guard, was asked about this after the game because they all started tweeting it Friday night. And then it culminated in Michigan President Santa Ono tweeting bet late Friday night. And that, got everybody fired up. But here's Trevor Keegan explaining why.
Bet. Where did that come from, and kind of what was the motivation behind doing that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the news and everything that happened, it pissed off a lot of guys. And we didn't want to dwell on it, so it was kind of just like joking around at dinner, like, should we tweet it? Like, yeah, sure. Like, it was like nothing like out of the ordinary. It was just, to get our minds off of what's actually going on. So it was pretty cool.
Do you remember who the first to bring it up was?
We saw Chris Jenks tweet it first, and then we're all sitting there like, all right, let's just all do it. So that's kind of how it went.
It's a movement. It's a move. And then here's the thing with Michigan. You've got a group that is going to hate Michigan and going to say they're cheaters and going to say everything's invalid that happens because of what they've got going right now with the Big Ten and the NCAA. You've got Michigan fans who are galvanized behind this team, who love this team even more, and actually probably love their administration even more because of the way that Michigan has chosen to handle this situation. This is not a very Michigan. Well, it doesn't strike me as what you expect from Michigan in a situation like this. And like right down to Ward Manuel, the athletic director's statement that came out an hour before kickoff. So he said, I want to make it clear at the outset of this statement that no one at the University of Michigan is happy to hear the allegations and preliminary evidence that has come forth about in-person scouting and sign stealing by a member of our football program. Talking about Connor Stallions. And yes, the Big Ten said, hey, we have evidence that the NCAA showed us that shows this was happening. But Ward Manuel goes on to say, however, no one here and no one at other universities around the country wants to be convicted and penalized without the due process of a complete investigation and with significant harm to our student athletes. This is a fundamental principle of our justice, NCAA, and until yesterday, our conference systems. Sadly, that's not what happened yesterday. And it goes on, but here's the end of it. You may have removed him from our sidelines today, but Jim Harbaugh is our head football coach. We look forward to defending Jim's right to coach our football team at the hearing on Friday. He has instilled his pride, passion, and the team's belief in themselves to achieve greatness. I will continue to support Jim throughout this process, my coaches and staff, and especially our student athletes, as we continue to play the game and fight to win for Michigan and all who love us. So you may hate that if you're an Ohio State fan, if you're a Nebraska fan, if you are anybody who likes anybody but Michigan. But Ward Manuel doesn't work for you. He works for Michigan. And so they are going to lean into this because they're getting a lot of Q rating out of this from their own constituents. Now, Ohio State people, they're going to make fun, and I don't blame them. This has been wild. This has been one of the weirdest scandals in college football history. Parts are funny, parts are odd. There's just so much going on here. Here's the deal. None of it matters. What matters is what happens on the field in Ann Arbor in 2 weeks. Now, both of them have games. Michigan's got to go play Maryland. We'll see if Jim Harbaugh is on the field there because remember, they do have that hearing on Friday. So a judge will rule on that injunction. So the judge, who it is, it's gone back and forth. The original judge who was assigned to this is a lecturer at the Michigan Law School. Then another judge picked it up. She actually was the one who presided over Connor Stallions versus the Homeowners Association a few years ago. But the first judge is now back in place, and I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that this is going to be one of the strangest few weeks that we've seen. So, if they get the injunction, Harbaugh's back on the sideline against Maryland and would be on the sideline against Ohio State. If he's not, then, well, they won at Penn State without him. I would think they can win at Maryland without him. Could they beat Ohio State without him? If they beat Ohio State without him, what does that mean? What if Ryan Day takes L number 3 in a row from Michigan and Harbaugh's not on the sideline? How bad would that be? That's just another layer to this. that I think that's what makes this thing so fascinating, is it just layer upon layer upon layer of strangeness. The football game itself was strange. 24-15, you think, okay, they chucked it around a bit. Nobody was chucking it around. Penn State couldn't throw, and Michigan didn't throw. And if you're James Franklin, there's not much you can say about this. You have to be better if you're Penn State. Eventually, you have to be able to compete with Michigan and Ohio State. And I know the playoff is expanding, and Penn State, as currently constituted, will be a team that can get into the playoff. But it won't be a team that can win the playoff unless it becomes a team that can compete with Michigan and with Ohio State. And right now, it can't. And that's not right. The program should be better than this. You should be able to compete with those teams. It shouldn't look like this. It shouldn't be a situation where a team can run the ball 32 times in a row and come out with a win, where a team can throw 8 times and come out with a win in your stadium, second largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history, and they were loud. I know J.J. McCarthy said after the game that they weren't that loud. They were loud. They were very loud. Didn't matter. Didn't help. They've got to get better. That's just that offense in the fourth quarter was sad. That third down throw before the last Blake Corum touchdown, the third down throw, I don't know where it was going. It just didn't seem to be aimed at anyone. And that's not good enough. When you claim to want to win national titles, you've got to show up for these games. And Penn State has not showed up for these games. Michigan showed up. Now, of course, Michigan was going to show up pissed off. And you saw that. And they won kind of in the personality of the guy who was running the show, Sharon Moore. Sharon Moore's the offensive line coach, offensive coordinator. He was the acting head coach. Weirdly, Jim Harbaugh being suspended for 3 games by the school for the other NCAA investigation that they're under probably helped them on Saturday, because they already had a system in place where Sharon Moore was the acting head coach. They'd had a system where Mike Hart was the acting head coach. Because remember, they did the 3-game suspension where in one game you had the Jay Harbaugh, Jesse Minter head coach pairing. One game Mike Hart was the head coach, and one game Sharon Moore was the head coach. And it allowed them to probably have their system down. Sharon Moore said that so that he could call the offense and be engaged on the sideline when the offense was off the field, Mike Hart took control of the timeouts. And Minter had control of the timeouts when the defense was on the field. So basically, Hart would come over the radio if they needed to get Sharon Moore's attention on something. But basically, they said to Minter, you've got this when the defense is on the field. It was a very interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a Mike Hart, Jay Harbaugh combination. And then the Minter had one by himself. So it was fascinating to see how they handled that. And the fact that being investigated by the NCAA already probably wound up helping them today. Again, yet another layer to one of the strangest cases we've ever seen in college football. And you know what? It's just going to keep on going. It's going to court now. On the court, then back on the field. Can't wait to see what happens next week. Talk to you guys tonight.